This is a special called meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee, of the Finance Committee, Public Works, the Traffic, Parking, and Transportation Committee to discuss Resolution RS 2021-794, approving a memorandum of understanding to transfer solid waste disposal responsibilities from the Department of Public Works to the Department of Water and Sewage Services. Today is Thursday, April 1st, no kidding. And Director Cooper, do we need to run by the motion to hold this meeting electronically?
Yes, sir, if you have that language there available.
I do. I'm going to make a motion that pursuant to Governor Lee's executive order number 78 regarding electronic meetings, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan Council, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Can I get a second on that? Second, okay. I haven't done a roll call yet to vote on that. If no one minds, I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I probably should have done that first. I would like each one of the committees to do a roll call. Ms. Toombs, I can do that for you. Are you prepared to do that for your Finance Committee?
I can do it as soon as I pull up the roll. If you want to do go ahead and do your committee, that's fine, and you can come back to me.
All right, I'll start out with Public Works, and then hopefully we've got Councilmember O'Connell here for his Transportation Committee. I'm going to do the roll call for Public Works Committee. Councilmember Henderson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Present and aye.
Councilmember Benedict.
I apologize, Chair. Are we roll calling for whether or not we can meet?
I'm roll calling for present or not present. Then after we do the roll call to see who's here, then we can have the vote on the motion for the electronic meeting.
Could I suggest, Chair, ask that we just do it at the same time since there's so many of us and it's a triple committee?
That'd be fine. Director, do you want to go ahead and count the votes?
If you're not actually going to be voting on anything today, I didn't know if you were actually going to be making a recommendation on the resolution. If so, then we can just do the hands if anyone objects, and then we can call off the name of everyone here since it's a multiple committees meeting at the same time.
Okay. So do we need to do the roll calls of committees to know who's here for calling the vote?
Only if you're going to be actually voting on something. If it's just for discussion, then there's no quorum requirement.
Okay. All right. I'm going to nix the roll call of the members of each committee, and we're back to voting on the motion for the executive order allowing us to meet electronically. All those in favor say aye.
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 If there's any negatives, please raise your hands. Seeing no hands, we are in business, and we'll head for the agenda. Just to kind of recognize the meeting here is, I think, to give members of these committees and other council members one more chance at a kind of an open meeting to discuss any questions they have with administration representatives on this resolution. So I know we have Ms. DeMassimo here with us, Ms. Whitelaw with us, Mike Jameson for the administration. Mr. Jameson, is there anybody else we should introduce for our members?
I think we have some members from Metro Water Services joining us here. They should be on your roll. For example, I think Amanda Deaton Moyers is here with us. I don't know if you can see her name, but
I see Jim Snyder.
Yes, sir. I'm here. Amanda's here.
Great, great.
Jim is here.
Super. Okay, I see those. So does anybody from the administration want to kind of start out with the overview of the justifications for the consideration of this memorandum of understanding, and then we're just going to open up to questions.
Hey, Councilman Nash, it's Mike, and first, thank you for this opportunity, and just let council members know that Mr. Massimo and Ms. Whitelaw and I are all in one room together, so you may just see one name on the screen. I think we're sharing Mr. Massimo's computer here, so I hope that is agreeable. And I thought if it just helped to get the ball rolling, maybe I could very quickly give a summary of the sort of the procedural posture of where the bill is, and then go over the questions that we received very briefly in summary form in this last go around, if that's of interest.
Sounds good.
So we received, or rather this bill was initially submitted for consideration on March 2nd. Went through the Public Works and Budget Committee meetings, deferred to the March 16th council meeting, had a special committee meeting on March 11th. We solicited questions, written questions in advance. We received a total of 30 questions, very good questions from 9 separate council members. Went to the March 16th council meeting, deferred after going to the same 2 committees, deferred to the April 6th meeting, and then at the March 16th meeting, this meeting that we're at here today was proposed. In advance of today's meeting, we only got 3 questions from 1 council member. We're trying hard to construe that as not meaning that you're tired of us, but not to belabor those responses, but they were circulated to council members today. I will give a very brief synopsis of those just to get the ball rolling, and then if we could turn to council members' questions. The 3 from Councilman Withers, 1 addressed just any potential staffing changes for Public Works that would be affected by the MOU for these civil service positions. Would there be positions that were eliminated? They are civil service positions, and no positions would be eliminated under this proposal. Councilman Withers' second question essentially addressed how the new DOT director would report to the mayor's office, and what would that interplay be with other department heads. And the director would report to the mayor's office just as any other department director does, and Mr. Massimo and Ms. Whitelaw would coordinate with him or her in the initial workup and development of the office. The criteria for the office, our HR department, as council members knows, has some pretty incredible experience in proposing criteria for positions as they exist in other parts of the country, and we anticipate working with them and developing those criteria. And the last question was essentially what staffing levels are contemplated with the DOT. And for several reasons, the exact number of positions and titles is being withheld pending the actual approval of this resolution to see what is authorized and then what can be proposed. That is not to be confused with the departments that are anticipating some pretty significant transportation needs in the upcoming and nearly imminent budget. Public Works, for example, is seeking 42 new positions. And what we want to make sure and clarify for council members and be sure this does not get lost in the mix is that is unrelated to the creation of a DOT. It has been acknowledged for months now that there is likely insufficient and inadequate staffing to meet transportation expectations. And the departments that have any role in transportation are seeking to address that. But again, that is irrespective. Public Works would be seeking these 42 positions irrespective of the creation of a DOT. So much to be done. The mayor has identified transportation as second only to recovery as the priority for the operating budget. And so we do anticipate some increase in personnel dedicated to transportation, regardless of the department or organizational form it takes. That's a very brief synopsis, but I just wanted to use that to get the ball rolling, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. I see hands up. I do ask, so we can do this meeting efficiently, that we try and keep the editorial comments that we kind of get caught up in to a minimum and just kind of get to the basic question. I have Murphy, O'Connell, and Mendez at the moment. Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, Chair Nash, for recognizing me since I'm not on this committee, but I do have to get off of this meeting early. So I asked some questions when the administration called me, and so I'd like to just re-ask them since I haven't gotten, that was just a day or two ago, so I haven't gotten responses yet because obviously turnaround. But so I'd like to know kind of the broader scheme and plan and timeline here. Why aren't we being Metro, finding not permanent, but non-interim department heads before we start doing this? Also, what other cities have used enterprise funds or the water department to collect trash? And really, what is kind of the long-term plan of these departments? I guess in my mind, I would have liked to see some sort of flow map or something submitted by y'all, because I'm just not seeing the greater view here. And I feel like we keep being asked to do these little steps and then something else. And for me, at least, it would make more sense if I knew, okay, over the next 6 months, these are the things you're going to be asking me. Because one of the things that y'all did do is you accepted my amendment on the transportation resolution that you were going to do the charter amendment for the DOT. I haven't really heard an update of what's happening on that. So could the administration speak to a little bit of like, is there a long-term plan here? Or are we just doing whatever we think of next? And then also, can I have some examples from other cities? Thank you.
I will take an initial stab, and let me start with sort of the chronology, if you will, the interim steps towards the creation of a DOT and then the subsequent charter amendment formalizing it. Ms. Whitelaw has put together a sort of fully fleshed out timeline between now and the July 1st establishment of a DOT and the interim internal steps that would precede that. And we will submit that to council members, hopefully perhaps this evening, certainly before Tuesday's meeting for consideration. The charter amendment, as you know, we would typically try to time that with a general election, the next opportunity being in August of 22. The Metro Legal Department will head up that initiative. And with a year and 4 months to go before that period, they are obviously awaiting the council decision on this resolution before charting out the specifics, but they have assured us as recently as this morning that that time period is more than enough for them to have prepared the timeline and necessary components of that. What is, in terms of the long-range plan for solid waste, the intention here is in pairing it with Metro Water to bring this division into existence. There have been some council members that have asked, is it necessarily going to be permanently and forever associated with the Metro Water Services Department? And the answer is no, not necessarily. I think with the establishment of an MOU version, that gives council members, the public, the administration a chance to see a working model, if you will, not just in advance of a charter amendment, but in advance of a determination of where it should rest permanently. In terms of what other cities have nestled their solid waste component within an enterprise fund, we've gotten other variations of that question, and that is what other cities have nestled it within a water department as opposed to a public works department or an enterprise fund. If you look at the peer cities comparisons that were sent out, I guess several weeks ago, and looking at those 10 cities, it goes about 50-50, those who pair it with public works versus those who pair it with water and wastewater. The trend does appear to be pairing it with water and wastewater, and I do suspect that that is because the waste stream as a recyclable element is being paired with water as a recyclable element, but it is split about 50-50 among the cities that we've looked at. You also have cities that designate it as a wholly separate, unique, independent department. I think that is probably more arguably the trend. Sorry, that is more arguably the trend than the pairing. What we envision, of course, is that we've seen a Metro Water Services Department that is not only highly effectively run by the council members' own estimation, but a water services department that has demonstrated a clear commitment to sustainability. You will have seen in the last few months, for example, the solar panels that are now being erected at 3 of the wastewater treatment plants. That follows a succession of other sustainability initiatives that the water department has taken. And we believe that they can bring the same philosophy and rationale to our wastewater streams. Let me shut up because there's greater expertise in the room and turn over to Ms. Whitelaw.
Yes, hello. One other thing I think, Councilmember Murphy, you asked about, I thought I heard you say cities that use water enterprise money to collect trash. I think that's what I heard, and I just want to reiterate to everyone. That's what, okay. Well, but no enterprise funds will be used for solid waste. And Mr. Jameson is correct that it is a trend of solid waste to be separated, but there are about 50% of the peer cities that do have wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste combined together.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Murphy?
It gets close enough for now. I'll wait and see if the administration submits the timeline that hasn't been submitted or whatever they've got, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember O'Connell, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess following up on Councilmember Murphy's question, so I guess I want to seek a little bit of clarification about this, the working model. Know that peer cities do. In recent correspondence, your office has indicated that most cities our size house their solid waste operations in an independent. And you know, what we have also heard seems to be that very few peer cities house their solid waste functions, especially at our size, with their local water utility. Unless, as I guess, again, part of that waste stream model. I guess I'd be trying to figure out then, I know, Mike, you mentioned sort of the working model, and maybe this is how you were answering this, is should we consider the current proposal to be an interim arrangement, or is this the intent, the model that the administration would intend to pursue under a charter amendment?
I think the intent here in terms of just bringing solid waste division into its own is that is certainly, there's no intention that it be forever absolutely in concrete paired with Metro Water Services. I think the intent is to have, again, sort of a demonstrable demonstration for consumers, the council members, the administration as to whether or not this is working before presumably a charter amendment does solidify where it is located. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that is.
Yeah, I think that's coming close enough. I guess my hope here would be that we would give serious consideration to what is working well in other cities as we go do this. I think you'll find that many of my colleagues are fully supportive of the idea of a DOT. I think most of the confusion and perhaps consternation here is around this particular working model, given its apparent rarity. Then I was going to just follow up on the responses you all submitted today to Councilmember Withers' question. Am I reading that correctly? And did you say that we're looking at 42 new staff positions requested for FY22?
From Public Works, correct.
Okay.
Now
And
that
then-
I should underscore, and I say this with the deepest deference and love and respect for all our department heads, but you may not be surprised to know that sometimes they ask for more than they expect to get, as perhaps a bargaining approach. So this has been submitted to the administration and to finance. How that fleshes out to council remains to be seen.
And then do we know correspondingly how many positions We Go Public Transit will be requesting for FY22?
I do not know. Just to share a conversation, Steve Bland would be here, but for the fact that he is, I think, heading up a North Nashville based meeting at the moment. So, but we are making notes to ask him what that position request will be.
And then I guess my final question would be, based on the just approved capital spending plan, I asked that question because there were very few transit investments in that capital spending plan. And I know the transportation plan that was approved just before that was anticipating pretty significant capital investments in transit. I'm wondering if we should anticipate another capital spending plan. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, schedule is at your discretion, but will there be a capital spending plan that follows this that actually has a corresponding investment on the transit side rather than kind of broadly under transportation?
Sure. It is. I am offering our best guess at this moment. So please, if this proves wrong in the coming months, my apologies. Based on the projections you've seen and the number of capital spending plans that we have averaged in this city, there have been years where we've had just one, but the majority of time you're looking at least 2 capital spending plans each year. There have been notable years, 2010, for example, where there were, I think, maybe 3 or 4 in a disaster-filled year. I think we can easily compete with that at this time. So all of that to say, the projections that you're hearing now is that likely in the fall, there will be a need for a capital spending plan to meet the exigent needs. Again, that is speculation at best, given the fact that we just passed this recent one so recently. But I think the smart money is on a capital spending plan this fall.
All right, and I guess let me just dig into that. I would hope that the answer to this is yes, but should we then anticipate in whatever that next capital spending plan that there will be an emphasis on transit improvements?
There will certainly be an inclusion of transit improvements. Where we are in the recovery, whether or not that takes precedence, I wouldn't want to scale it compared to others, but certainly an inclusion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I've got for now.
Thank you, Councilman O'Connell and Mr. Jameson.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Chair. This is Steve Glover. I've been on since the very beginning, but my mic wasn't working. I was just checking that. Thank you. I would like to ask questions after everybody else is finished. Thank you.
Okay, you'll be up after Mr. Mendez. Councilmember Mendez, you're recognized.
Thanks, Councilmember Nash. I think most of my questions are similar to things that have been discussed at previous meetings. But I know the administration has put a few more weeks of work in, and I'm interested in the more refined version on a couple of questions. Let's start with there's been talk at a previous meeting about let's get this passed in advance of the budget because there might be an impact on the operating budget. And I'm interested in the current thinking on what passing this might, what could be the potential impact on the operating budget.
The number of positions that other departments ask likely won't be affected. I mean, we're going to have a number of transportation related requests from departments that are irrespective of of the DOT, and that remains the same and unchanged as before. To the extent there would be admittedly de minimis requirements, advertising for a DOT director, working through HR for that search, developing those criteria, those would be acknowledged impacts on or before July 1. To the extent we can advertise for a Department of Transportation director as opposed to a Public Works director, has been suggested to us as being important. That, in other words, the stars in the DOT realm that would consider coming to Nashville, or if they're already here serving as the DOT director, that person, he or she, wants to be a DOT director, not a Public Works director. And so there's been some concern and discussion about how this is labeled and the importance that can have on the organizational structure there is. Otherwise, I think no other changes to the previous answers that I'm aware of.
So a search would happen before the operating budget goes in effect. So net, I hear no impact at all on the operating budget if this passes?
I think that's generally correct, yes.
Okay. And then I want to revisit the balance of how we should view this. This legislation generally, and I'll offer two perspectives. This was pitched initially as it creates a Department of Transportation, and then separately, for example, I got contacted by a member of the Solid Waste Region Board who is all in favor of this legislation because it's the first step in the Zero Waste Plan, which proposes the creation of a solid waste authority and ultimately imposing solid waste disposal fees. And so we have the language reads like it's about solid waste, and I've got a member of the Solid Waste Regional Board telling me that this is an important first step toward implementing the Zero Waste Plan. And then separately, it's been initially pitched as creating a Department of Transportation. And I guess I'm wondering, after the month or so of discussion, how is it that the administration would suggest that we and the public think about this in terms of, is this about transportation? Is it about solid waste? Is it about both? What's the balance?
I think it's all of that. The game plan here, and my apologies if I haven't articulated this particularly well in one-on-one, is that we have currently transportation assignments across several departments, and the lack of a unifying singular vision department has been somewhat of a problem. The mayor would like nothing short of, and I think your constituents would like nothing short of, knowing that every morning there's somebody driving to work at Nashville whose singular focus and job description and duty focuses on traffic flow. And we don't currently have that. Most of Public Works assignments are transportation related. So to the extent there are elements in that have nothing to do with transportation, namely solid waste, if that can be removed, then you are creating a de facto Department of Transportation. What others have seen as an ultimate result of that, this is like looking at stars with your friends and they see things that you don't see. I think a lot of people put in their ambitions and hopes and dreams. I would love nothing better personally than seeing the Zero Waste Plan emerge through the Solid Waste Division. I know that Metro Water Services, because of their advocacy for sustainability efforts in the past, that is something that they'll probably be looking at. But that is not something that we can tell you is included within this package. It's not. There have been discussions about, is this going to result in pay as you throw? Personally speaking, I'm an advocate for pay-as-you-throw. That is not in this package, and that is a discussion for approval by the council at another date and another time if they want to do it. That can be possible, but that is not within this legislation. It is neither advanced nor hindered by this legislation. All we're trying to establish is creating a de facto Department of Transportation through a public works that is now isolated to transportation and having solid waste more expertly handled. And we believe that more expert handling in that is best off in the hands of Metro Water Services.
All right, thank you. And then one other question, Chair. In the recent past, we've got a situation where the water department didn't share important information about regulatory issues with the council, and the explanation was that they were just following orders from the previous mayor's office. Given the fact that this project is going to take a number of years and may spill over into other administrations, what kind of accountability is going to be built into this to make sure that the council can be sure it's getting accurate information about how the transition is going?
There is an amendment that we would construe as a friendly amendment by one of your colleagues that may or may not be with us here today. So I will do my best to describe it, and if anybody else wants to add to it. That amendment would essentially, let me back up. Currently in the MOU, you do have a reporting obligation by Metro Water Services back to Public Works, and also an obligation that Metro Water Services maintain separate accounting records for solid waste, separate and apart from its water rates. And those reports likewise have to be provided to Public Works either annually or more often if the director so requests. The amendment that is being proposed, again, is a friendly amendment, would also add a reporting mechanism to the council, directly to the council, on a more frequent quarterly basis, so that the council can have a fairly swift indication of how successful is this transfer going, and every quarter being able to evaluate the historic change. And so the metrics that have been included in the amendment include performance metrics that are part of the operating budget, specifically what number of convenience centers are actively operating and the number of customers there. What is the total recycling tonnage that you have collected? What is the total waste tonnage? What is your on-schedule pickup ratio? You know, what is the percentage of missed calls and how quickly did you rectify those? Same for recycling pickup. The total costs per ton of waste that's collected, and also for recycling. Also to provide a narrative report from the Metro Water Services Director regarding the transition of employees. What number have been transitioned, what number remain, and just how is the transition overall going in terms of success or lack thereof. And the intent there is to bring to the council fairly prompt and disclosing information as to success of the transfer.
Thanks. Nothing else, Chair. Thanks.
You're welcome, council member. I have next Councilmember Glover. After Glover, I have Henderson, Allen, Vercher, Hurt, and Hall. I got you in the queue, so be patient. Councilmember Glover, go ahead.
Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Let me just make sure you can hear me. Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. I'm just making sure because I'm in the car and it wasn't working for a while. So before I start speaking, I want to make sure you could hear me. All right, so there's a couple of things that bother me about this entire conversation. Number one is that we are now talking about, you know, an additional capital spending plan after we just spent a boatload of money a month or so ago. Now, and now I'm hearing the priorities for this upcoming budget. I don't hear anything about public safety or anything else. This is not a, this is not an editorial. It's just the part that bothers me that we're moving pieces here without a lot of information. the MOU piece bothers me a great deal because I clearly think in my discussions with Mr. Cooper, this requires a charter amendment to do this. So I just keep coming back to the same thing in my head. This is an end around, and you know, it's get everybody there and then pay as you grow. I think that's what Mr. Jameson said. Pay as you grow. The money's not making sense to me. It's got to shift, because if you move from Public Works and you move over to the water department, water is clearly an enterprise fund, and I just can't get it to mesh up in my head. And it's been done in the past in Metro, and it has not worked out well as far as other moves that have been made as far as from Public Works to other departments. And so I am just very confused as to why is it so important to do this at this very moment prior to a charter amendment.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can respond, there's a lot to unpack there. So if I'll break them down, I think I heard essentially three sort of concerns or questions, all very legitimate. The first is, in terms of this being the first indication of a capital spending plan, a couple of things. Again, I cannot guarantee you that there will be one. My best guess from the indications we have so far is that there will be one in the fall. And that's just because if you look at what has already been identified as what is going to be a likely capital expense on the near horizon. One example is the juvenile court. If anybody saw that presentation from the judge and her associates on the clear capital needs that they have there, we've done our best to fund the necessary preliminary studies that will be required to find a location, to fund construction. But an item like that is going to be a fairly significant and urgent need, and could be, even without this resolution passing or not, there are clear needs shaping up that would appear to me to be imminent in the fall for a capital spending plan. But I would not in any way blame a DOT creation for another capital spending plan. That is on its way regardless, is my best guess at this moment. With respect to the pay as you throw, I just again want to caution council members, there are clear fans in the sustainability realm that really think we're handling garbage collection all wrong. And they will tell you that right now, if you throw out a piece of tissue once a week, and I throw out 3 bales of garbage every day, and the fact that we both pay the same amount, despite having vastly significantly different impacts on Metro's costs, that is just not fair. And so there are those advocates that will strongly tell you, including the Sustainability Advocacy Committee that came out with their report in January, that strongly advocated for adoption of a pay-as-you-throw approach. They view that as far more equitable. It's fairer to the person who doesn't dispose as much. And right now, there is absolutely no incentive to the person who throws out a lot of garbage every day to remotely conserve, to use a compost pile, to put it into the recycling bin. There is no penalty whatsoever that person encounters, and advocates tell us we're doing it all wrong. What I want to assure you of, however, is that debate is not today. That is not in this resolution. All we've done, that debate will come some other time. This resolution does nothing to neither advance the cause of pay-as-you-throw or to deter from it. And if it's the council's decision and 21 council members are convinced by advocates that we should change our way in terms of waste and recycling, that's not today. That'll come at some other point and come before you for your consideration and vote at that time. Lastly, with respect to the charter amendment, that is the ultimate intention here, to formalize the creation of a Department of Transportation through a charter amendment. But what you've seen in terms of precedent before, you've seen, for example, stormwater created by an MOU that persisted, by the way, for 10 years before they got to the charter amendment that formalized it. And so we are following that model. The IT department did not used to exist. It was a figment within the Department of Finance before it became a separate department. So we believe that this is a model that not only allows us to do something now, because if the answer is create a transportation plan and then just sit back and do nothing until we get the chance to adopt a charter amendment, which we can't do at best until a year and a half from now, Or in comparison, go through an MOU, develop a working model, have something to show to council members and the public in terms of whether or not it works, and then have the vote formalizing it or not. I think that is the far better approach and the one that will better serve your constituents and the one that will show you the cost savings possibilities or not.
With all due respect, my constituents are very concerned that this will create another income stream for metropolitan government. And that's where, I mean, and Mr. Jameson, you know where I come from on this stuff. And let me be very clear. This bothers me that we're doing it, and I think it's backwards. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus right now as far as various departments, but there are issues we need to clean up inside of Metro right now before we start creating more. And so with that, Chair, I don't have any other questions. I don't feel better about it than I did when we first started. Thank you.
Well, we're sorry you're feeling bad. Council Member Henderson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think for my first question, I just wanted to kind of continue with a little clarifying on the questions of Councilman Mendez and O'Connell and Glover that are in the kind of in the financial space, particular to the proposed trash move. So, Mr. Jameson, you have said, and Ms. Whitelaw has also said, that you're using the stormwater change as a model. And we've spoken previously about how stormwater, because it's in the public right of way, you know, the ditches along the roads and the culverts and so forth, used to be at Public Works. And then it was moved to water. You outlined that timeline, an MOU, it was in place for a long time. But at the end of all that, there's a stormwater utility fee, and you know, a utility or a user fee particular to stormwater. And so I know we have Ms. Deaton Moyer on the call. So I kind of feel like I hear you saying two things, right? That there's no intent through this MOU, or this MOU does not establish or an enterprise fund or express an intent to do so. But if we look at the strategic plan and the zero waste master plan, and you know, the person on the board that called Mr. Mendez, and just more generally conceptually talking about pay as you throw, you know, that seems to be kind of the preponderance of the momentum. And so if you're asserting in the intervening time that this is sort of an interim step, and you know, maybe this is proof of concept about, you know, just from a managerial perspective about having trash and recycle in water, can you speak to, I guess maybe from Ms. Deaton Moyer, if trash at present is funded out of the general fund, just how, from a kind of a managerial and financial perspective, you're going to keep those things separate. And then, Chair, if I may, subsequent to that, I think that will just segue to a more kind of practical organizational question after that, if I may.
You may, Ms. Deaton Moyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Stormwater is a good model, and I'm glad you bring it up. We spend so much time ensuring that stormwater is held separately from water because those fee structures are different. When someone pays $1 for stormwater, they're not paying for a gallon of drinking water. And we do that by very close attention to where expenses are. We actually get down to even considering a person who might spend a little bit of time on water and a little bit of time on stormwater. We actually split that up and look at the percentage of work. We are very, very careful to ensure that those costs are done appropriately. The concept of solid waste moving to Metro Water would be very similar in that the funding nature and the fund coding and all of the things that come along with that would have to remain separate. Invoices, purchase requisitions, we have staff that take significant a time that and go through quite a few reviews to ensure that fund structure. That is actually one of the hallmarks of governmental accounting is fund accounting and the fund structure, and we take it very seriously.
Okay, I appreciate that response. And then I guess, Mr. Jameson, do you want to speak then in that same space? I guess, you're speaking kind of conceptually and philosophically about how, pay as you throw is potentially more fair and it's a good model, and our sustainability strategic plans kind of speak to it. So again, it's, in my view, as far as y'all's communication around this, and the challenge for us as a council is kind of like that kind of both sidesing of this discussion, right? So you're speaking to how conceptually way out in the future, this might be a good thing to do, and how doing this MOU doesn't commit us to doing that, but you're using that long range conceptual thing to justify doing it, right?
No.
Yes,
No.
that's what I'm hearing.
What gave rise to the combination with Metro Water Services? There is no connection, there is no theory, there is no conspiracy on the part of the administration to sneak in pay as you throw. And I know you're not saying that, but there are social media posts that are sort of speculating to that. Here's the easiest thing I could say to that element. If there was a council member who strongly believed in pay as you throw right now, they could file an ordinance tomorrow. It has nothing to do with the department where it's assigned to. Yes, there are advocates, and we are hearing from sustainability advocates that again tell us we're handling the waste stream entirely improperly and that pay as you throw is the way to go. I don't know that answer. What I do know is that this legislation does nothing to put your feet in stone on pay as you throw, period, at all. It neither advances the argument nor deters it. We've recognized, we've heard what people have said. They've seen, oh, well, Stormwater, and they've got this model, exactly the same line of discussion you were hearing from others. Yes, I want to acknowledge that pay as you throw is an existing approach that other cities have used. Other cities are recommending to us. Nashvillians that believe in sustainability and the fairness of it, they all have their arguments. I don't know that answer. I don't know that the council has that answer. What I do know is that this legislation doesn't put that issue in front of you in any way. It saves it for the next time, and whether or not that time even comes, I don't know.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, Chair, with your indulgence, that's sort of my financial piece of my question, and then the more kind of structural, kind of, how do you effectuate this change, more particularly in the public works side, right? So, I guess what I want to understand, Ms. DeMassimo or Mr. Jameson, is, kind of what's your plan B? So, I mean, I know that the administration, that this is your strategy, this is the way you think is best to advance this. But, in a hypothetical space, if this were not to pass, or just kind of conceptually, right, as you're strategically thinking about how this could happen, the Berry administration, the previous administration was looking at a more kind of phased implementation of creating a division of transportation, and, in time, pulling trash out to exist as its own department. And so, Mr. Jameson, you spoke to at the start of this about, kind of finding a star, somebody to lead a DOT, somebody not wanting to come and lead a public works department. I hear you somewhat. I think somebody would want to come to a major MSA with the transportation plan that we have to lead a division of transportation if that person, he or she, knew that this council supports a DOT, and as does this administration, and we're on this path to evolve in X number of years to that. So it seems like we're hanging a lot on, getting that kind of star savior type to come and lead this DOT. And I wonder if you could just speak to the Plan B opportunity of a division of transportation and why that was completely ruled out. Because if you need 42 more positions in public works today, irrespective of a DOT, it seems like, there's a lot of work to do in public works. And I think, I've expressed some frustration to the administration that the work that is being done to potentially lay the foundation for a DOT really can't be seen, hasn't been communicated about very much. And so if you're kind of beginning as you intend to go with these programmatic improvements on the path to a DOT, why then would creating a division of transportation along that path not work? So if you could speak to that, please.
Chair, if it's all right, I'm going to take this question.
You're recognized, Mr. Massimo.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember, thank you so much for that question. I appreciate it very much. We also appreciate the opportunity to provide you with that in-depth analysis of all the work and the foundational work that has been done. And I trust that that really helped to be clear with these very important foundational pieces that are necessary to enable a Department of Transportation to succeed, but also equally important, allows our transportation function currently housed within Public Works to improve in some pretty dramatic ways. But a lot of work that had to be done over this first year and a half. And again, we hope that that information that we provided to you was helpful. With regard to—
I apologize, the information you provided to me, are you saying that's the information you're going to get to the body before Tuesday?
No, ma'am, we sent you an email. You had asked that question of us the other day about—
We spoke on Tuesday.
And we sent you an email, a very detailed email yesterday. Wasn't that right, Shanna? We sent you—
Okay, I haven't seen that yet. And so I look forward to seeing that. I would encourage you to send that to the body, but I don't know if you were wanting to know if that was feedback from me and answering. I was posing a lot of questions that I thought the council would like to hear.
Of course.
I've not seen that in my inbox, so.
Well, I will resend it to you. And glad to send it to all of council for anyone who's interested in all of that detail. But further to your question about a division of transportation simply does not put us on par with major metro areas across the country. Our peers have departments of transportation and organizational units that are really dedicated to that, not housed under some larger entity. And there is not the same level of attraction in this industry for that kind of a career opportunity. Again, we do, as we've been working and as evidenced in that email that we sent to you, we have been diligently pursuing both improvements to the staff organization as it presently exists and major improvements to the business processes and delivery processes that exist. And we completely understand and appreciate that all those things aren't dramatically apparent to council as yet. But I know that all of you all have been in business of some sort and understand that when you're turning a ship, it takes a bit. And we are very confident of that foundation that we've set with all the things that we sent to you. We're glad to share it with all of council. But the answer would stand that a interim step on this journey just doesn't really give us the effect that we need to really make that transformation and really begin taking that foundation that we've set and moving it forward to high value. And Mr. Jameson may have further comments to add. Thank you.
I can't improve upon that. So it's the beauty of having somebody who's done this for 40 years at my side.
And I just want to acknowledge you did email me midday yesterday, and I had just missed that email. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have Councilmember Allen up next with Vercherhurt and Hall to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. In the information that was sent today, it was stated that WEGO will currently stay its own separate entity. Could someone explain just a little bit more what the relationship between those two departments will be, and if one is subservient to the other, and how how decisions that involve both of those will be made.
Certainly. Councilmember, thank you very much for the question. That one is not subservient to the other. We are strong collaborative partners. And we believe that the focus on transportation within this hopeful new organization will enable us to even build upon that further and strengthen our, particularly in planning and in the delivery of projects where we have joint projects, if you will, of a sort with WeGo, that we'll be able to collaboratively work together to plan more effectively in a multimodal environment, as well as to deliver on those plans as they're made. But it is a collaborative partnership of two entities that are constituted separately.
And in the drafting, Council Lady, of the legislation and the underlying MOU, Steve Bland was an active partner in both steps. And I want to repeat, he would be here now, but for the fact that he's heading up another meeting. But he did take the opportunity to tell me on the phone today he has remained supportive of the MOU and the underlying legislation.
Thanks. That's very helpful to understand. One final question then. In terms of budget, would projects appear under MTA, I mean, WeGo, or under Department of Transportation? I mean, if we're building better sidewalks to a bus shelter and doing something to the lane to make it function better, who owns that?
Councilmember, it'll depend on who the project sponsor is and where the funding source is coming from. So it could appear under both. And there could even be a project where a project that appears in both because we each own a different element of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions. Councilmember Vercher.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the recognition and everyone's patience as we try to get just some understanding of what the long-term plan is. For me, the more we discuss it, it simply doesn't make sense. And again, for me, I can't confidently, with confidence, justify this to those that have elected me. I still get complaints from constituents about the stormwater fee, and many of them were on board with the stormwater fee because as a city, we made promises that their areas would not continue to flood, that the money, their fee, would be utilized to resolve their issues that they had as it related to flooding. And I think, I know it's a lot of details and about trying to recruit talent, what the name should be, the department, the division, who's going to own what and how. But many of my colleagues, we all know that once legislation is passed by this body, the council essentially owns it. It creates the narrative in the event something should go wrong that it was council approved. Mr. Jameson was absolutely right. They're not going to sneak it in because you're going to vote for it. That's what these conversations are about. And as a body, we need to be honest. We're barely collecting trash timely. Now, I know a lot of work has been done in that space, but we're still struggling as a city to deliver basic services to the residents here. We still got major needs in those areas. We don't even know what our new norm is going to be. We haven't even discussed about how we're going to be funding this thing. Where's the dedicated funding coming from? The model has been talked about, stormwater. If we're going to use that model, it's also been alluded to. We can't wait a year. It's not about the city waiting a year. You got communities that's still waiting. One neighborhood, 20 years for a traffic light. I think more work needs to be done.
Respectfully, Council Lady, is there a question here?
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to do the respectfully thing with me. I'm gonna get there. I'm going to get there. But this is what our committees are for. This is where we hash it out. If we don't hash it out in committees, then you have council members calling press conferences with inaccurate information. So for me, I need to know, is this about the plan as it relates to the title of creating a Department of Transportation, or is it about us being able to recruit talent? Because cities of our size, they call it different things. And I still don't get why we can't, with our current structure that we have, why we can't make that work more efficient and be more strategic in that space. And I know I said a lot to get to that question, Chair, but again, colleagues, this is where we do our work on these special call committees. Thank you, Chair.
All warranted and justified comments, Councilor, and I appreciate that. If I had a vote, if I were on council and had the option of simply awaiting a charter amendment that then creates a department that is brand new and untested, or if before that, a year or more, had the option of creating through an MOU an informal version that then reports to council every 3 months how they're doing on every metric for performance that we've ever come up with for an operating budget, from the amount of trash they pick up to the time it takes them to resolve complaints, and had that data in my hand before deciding whether or not to formalize this, I would pick that route. And as a council member, I think I'd have far more data and information and comfort and the ability to tell my constituents, we now know this works. Here's the last year's worth of data that we can show you. And that it was intended as a graduated step that hopefully attracted the council's comfort. Last term, I was working in the council office and we issued a poll to council members, and it had two purposes. One was just to ask council members, how is the council staff doing? How can we better serve you on a day-to-day basis? And the second aspect was, what departments are serving you well and why, and which ones aren't and why? And maybe we can reach out to them and learn from those that do well and correct those that aren't doing so well. You may remember the results. They were announced at the group meeting that the vice mayor called at the time. Metro Water Services was not just number one, but number one by a wide margin. We have had departments, unfortunately, whose officers and staff have found themselves on the front page of the paper with all sorts of unsavory allegations. But I challenge you to find many stories like that about Metro Water Services. I challenge you to find many complaints against Metro Water Services, delivery, staff decorum, budget. And so it was no mystery to me and no shakeup when I saw nationally renowned experts that came to work in the Cooper administration. And I don't want to embarrass Fada Massimo, but she's one of them. Kristen Wilson, Shanna, all of them just spending a year and a half here, all have gravitated towards, this is a remarkably run department. And we're seeing at least what appears to be a trend of solid waste being paired with other sustainability elements, namely water. It only made sense. And so it's for stormwater. And so it made immediate sense to people coming here with a fresh perspective. It made immediate sense to, I thought, council members who took that poll and expressed their preferences for how Metro Water Services operates. And that was the intent. If this goes wrong, and I'll be the first to tell you that anything we do, any step we take can be a miscalculation. But you have an MOU that allows either side to cancel this immediately, and everything goes back. Public Works employees go back to being Public Works employees, et cetera. As far as the funding for this, again, you heard Amanda Deaton Warriors. This is two segregated accounts. This is not going to change its funding stream from USD general funding resources. That'll stay the same as it has before and can go back, I assume, fairly easily within 90 days if it's canceled, if we make a mistake. But I got to tell you, my gut tells me, just looking at the people that have worked on this, the people that it's going to, the people that are genuinely enthused about it, that this is going to be a success that you can brag about to your constituents when it comes time for the formalizing charter amendment.
Mr. Jameson, we've heard that before, and unfortunately, many in the city they've been disappointed. And I think I don't know what the answer is for the administration. I can only just speak my level of confidence in the feedback that I get from my constituents. And FYI, so that you know, I poll and robocall my own district. Any of these issues, I'm not speaking off the cuff. I'm not voting as it relates to my own personal interests. I take the information to the people, and I go back to where the alarm is and where the pause is and where the lack of confidence is, not in the administration, because everything that goes out is put on this actual body. Is put on is the narrative is there's no confidence because we're failing in those other areas of service. I would be more open to, let's continue the dialogue. Let's solidify, more granular details with this while working to improve the other services in the city. I mean, we just tacked on a 34% property tax on people. I mean, we got to get something right here before we start creating new departments that we don't know will be efficient or not. Thank you, Chair. I don't want to belabor the point. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, Councilman Vercher. Council Lady Hurt, do you still have a question for us?
I do, and I agree wholeheartedly with quite a few things that Council Lady Vercher has raised, as well as Councilman Glover. Just a couple of things that I want to say and bring to the attention. It seems to me that we're talking about at least 2 or 3 or 4 different populations of constituents here, because many of the people that I know that I have worked with are not those who are composting and recycling and doing all of those things, and they are unable to sustain things. But the things that I really want to say is that I don't think that the haste is necessary. It really, really does concern me. I love the transportation department at Denver, and I know that it was not something that was done overnight. I also, Mr. Jameson, respectfully, I know that Metro Water did get some great responses for the survey that was done, but Metro Water also hid some very important information from the council, and that concerns me. And I particularly know that our liaison from Metro Council with Metro Water was very much a part of that. The other thing is that I wanted to say is that, speaking of Metro Water, we've not heard from them. Mr. Snyder or Director Potter, do they want the solid waste in their department? I mean, to me, that's just a simple, pragmatic question. Do they want it over there? Not will they accept it, but do they want it? And I'd like to hear from them. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Well, thank you. And I would say thank you, Council Member Hurt, as well. I can tell you I bring a very unique perspective on this whole discussion. I've been with water for the last 11 years. I can tell you that and prior to that, 25 years at Public Works. And I think the greatest challenge for Public Works historically and even now is that you have two very important components, two services that are under one umbrella. And they're both very, very important and both deserve the attention that we're trying to give them. I think this process will work very well. It will give us the focus on transportation. And then it will put the solid waste component under a department that is very well managed. I can tell you that I've had the privilege of serving under several directors, and I am absolutely confident that the administration, that the leadership at Water Services can provide benefit to the solid waste component. I think you have already seen that in what Ms. Whitelaw has done. So once again, I honestly believe this is the solution to putting us on the right track to solve our transportation challenges and also continue with the benefits of what we're seeing on the solid waste side. As Mr. Jameson has already pointed out, there's an opportunity to as we think about the structure of a solid waste, this is a good first step. And so, Councilmember Hurt, yes, I think this is a good step, one that the Water Department is willing to take on, will do a good job with. And if the council and administration wants to do something different with it in the future, would be receptive of that as well. I think this is going to set the course for a very successful transportation plan and continue the good things that we're seeing on the solid waste side as well. And I have to admit, I sat here and I wanted to say something So Councilmember Hurt, you read my mind. Thank you for that opportunity.
And Jim, if I can tack on to that, just in response, Council Lady, to your question about Director Potter, if he has spoken to this, and I want to redirect your attention to the written questions that preceded the last specially set meeting. This was circulated March 11th. One of the questions from Council Lady Benedict was she wanted to hear from Director Potter. We sent that question to him. Honestly, I assumed we'd get it maybe a paragraph. He sent a single-spaced page and a half filled with how excited he is. And he notes there at the beginning, I believe the solid waste functions of environmental sustainability complements and provides an addition to the Metro Water Services environmental sustainability mission nicely. Additionally, the practical application of providing solid waste functions to the city are quite similar to what Metro Water Services does every day. And if you think about what they already have, the support staff that Metro Water already has in place that so well complements the solid waste objective. They already have a call center. They already have fleet management. They already have daily customer interaction. They already have internal administrative support, HR, finance, and IT. This could be, I think, one of the most seamless transitions we could envision. And we're very excited about Metro Water Services being so receptive to this. And I want to thank Mr. Snyder.
Oh, and Mike, I might.
So I kind of got a different opinion because, see, where to me, that could have been either an easy yes or no. And what Mr. Snyder said is that, you know, if that's what the administration wants, then yes, they will take it on. And Metro Water did not suggest that they take on solid waste. I think what they have done is accepted what it is the administration is offering, and they will make it work. Not so much that they believe, and this is something that they want to happen, but they will adjust and accommodate what happens. And as you speak about Ms. Whitelaw, so I'm not sure, you know, Ms. Whitelaw she was working with Metro Water. Now she's working with Public Works. So, and that just says to me that Ms. Whitelaw is a great manager and she can adjust and do things well wherever it is that she is. So I'm not really sure that my question was answered, and I'm not so sure that it was answered totally by Metro Water and what Metro Water wants. So I too am very hesitant in accepting this because I think it takes time. I think we're gonna have to really truly vet. And I think that the constituents, because I believe when solid waste goes to Metro Water and all of this is tacked on to bills, that you're gonna see a lot of trash out on the streets. I don't think it's gonna work like we think it. It may work well in some areas, but then other areas, I believe that it can be catastrophic.
Any further reply, Mr. Schneider? Oh, you have to unmute.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, I left my hand up. Well, no, there's nothing else to add. The answer is yes. We're excited about working with the solid waste program. And really, I can't say more to that. And I know that we'll be very successful at doing it. Thank you.
Do you want it? I think Councilor was asking for a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Councilmember Hull, and then Johnston and Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for everybody for participating today. I know special call meetings, throw off schedules and whatnot. And I'll be as brief as I possibly can. Mr. Jameson, if you could, Chair, I want to direct this to Mr. Jameson. Could someone please tell me where in the solid waste plan it mentions transit, transportation, or the creation of a DOT?
I may have to defer to. Right. Do you mind if I defer that to our expert?
No, not at all.
Can you repeat the question for Ms. Whitelaw and Mr. Massimo?
Having just gone through the solid waste board and dealing specifically with other issues that we're dealing with directly related to trash, where in the solid waste plan to get to zero waste, is there any mention of a creation of a DOT, transit, or transportation?
You're on.
Oh, sir, there's not. There is not. The solid waste plan is focused strictly on solid waste. The zero solid waste plan is focused. It has nothing to do with the DOT or transportation activities.
But the transportation.
Okay, and in addition to that, specifically the plan does talk about diversion and that the need for creating a separate enterprise fund to finance additional recycling, consideration of tax increases and other things to finance the other 10% that weren't going to be immediately included in that. By default, moving solid waste to stormwater is creating that enterprise fund that would focus on that zero waste plan or be affected by that zero waste plan. But nothing with transit, transportation, or DOT has any impact or inclusion in that conversation. So I'm just for the general public, I need some clarity on how we're putting those apples and oranges in the same bag. And then the last question, so you guys can answer that and I can get out of the way for somebody else. My follow-up question is going to be, what was the Comptroller's review of stormwater? Because just before the end of term during this last budget, when we were going back and forth and dealing with the Comptroller's review of things, we were very close to a no confidence vote for water services. And at that point, you know, as my other colleagues have just mentioned, those glowing reviews were almost wholly based on Mr. Snyder, Mr. Honeysucker, and a few other folks, and the tremendous amount of work that they do with council on a daily basis. And so I don't want to muddy the waters with that we know that it's structured a great way, and it has some assets that need to be duplicated or could be duplicated, but we were left with a horrible taste in our mouths post-budget last year, specifically geared toward that. And so I don't want to dismiss those things because it was very significant. And I think moving forward, we need to be very cognizant of, while we may want a trial run on certain things, right now as a city, we are doing an absolutely horrible job with some providing basic services, including flood mitigation. We just had loss of life and major damage due to flood mitigation in the last week. And we're talking about the same areas and the same problems and the same things that we were 10, 15, 20, and 30 years ago. So if I could get those two, I'm out of the way for the next. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councilman Hall. I can answer the first portion. The solid waste plan does not talk of transportation. You're absolutely right. It does talk about diversion. The solid waste plan is for the city, and it is not necessarily tied directly to the solid waste activity. It is tied to solid waste activities, but not depending on where solid waste is housed, whether it's in public works or whether through the MOU water services. And as you also know, the transportation plan focuses on the DOT. So they are separate. So as you say, apples and oranges, we're not trying to mix the fruit. We're actually trying to separate the fruit, to speak to that. So they are two separate plans with two separate focuses. As for the last audit, I believe you were, or the last stormwater audit, I will defer to Amanda Deaton-Moyer or Mr. Schneider regarding that. I believe the audit was related to water and sewer, but I will let Ms. Deaton-Moyer speak to that.
Thanks, Shanna. Do I have permission to speak, Chairman?
Please.
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Hall. I think what you're reflecting on is the oversight of the Comptroller for the Water and Wastewater Financing Board. And we are continually under oversight of that board and will be under oversight of that board until they release us. We actually have to do a report twice a year, giving them, much like we have to give you, that we give, that they look at each year and each time to give us approval to continue on. So that is, we are presently in good standing, but are still under their oversight. As it relates to stormwater, we are continuing on our practice and collecting revenue for those practices. And I can perhaps let Mr. Snyder talk to some of the other pieces of the flooding and so forth, but I think I've answered that first question.
Councilman Hall, did that answer that part of that question for you?
It did. I appreciate it, Chair. And I really appreciate the responses. And I just wanted to mention the fact that the reason I said that was specifically because, one, we are struggling with some specific things right now in terms of services provided, but moreover, the fact that we don't want to muddy the waters. And we spent about the last 40 minutes talking about transit and transportation as it related to the solid waste plan, and the two are diametrically opposed to one another and have nothing to do with one another, and I don't think we should allow that.
Mr. Schneider, I think you were referenced, did you want to follow up on the Mr. Hall's question?
I'm sorry, I fell off a connection on my laptop. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I was trying to get
Councilmember Hall. I think something about
it wasn't so much a question. It was just the fact that I had made mention of why were we mixing the apples and oranges with that conversation, and not that why isn't the focus on providing better service than we are now currently, than adding new responsibilities, because we're doing, you know, and you and I have talked how many times in the last week to that effect. we're not providing the service we need to provide now. We just had loss of life and a ton of damage from flooding. And I would absolutely bet dollars to donuts that 80% of it was preventable. And that's because we have not focused on the 10-year plan on the solid, not when it comes to solid waste. That's a given, but we don't have a solid plan and direction for flood mitigation. And we're trying to mix transit into trash into stormwater, and it's just muddying the waters. So I guess the question was alluded to or more focused on why is stormwater willing to take this on, or water so willing to take this on when it's struggling to provide basic everyday services now?
And Chair, would you like to respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. Councilman, I think the overall goal is always to provide better services. Do we do a good job? I think we do. Can we improve? We always can. And so, and as we focus back on the transportation, solid waste piece of it, but more particularly the transportation, and I think that is the overall goal, to get us in a position with the staff, to get us in a position with the leadership on the transportation side, so that we can focus and make improvements there. I'll tell you right now, I'm an avid cyclist, and so I understand multimodal and excited about those opportunities. But as we think about how we structure, particularly the situation, the focus really is the transportation plan is really what we're talking about. And so, once again, the overall goal is if we can put the professional boundaries around that and get the professionals that we need, we think that we can improve on that. Yes, we have to address the solid waste piece of that. And I'm convinced that we can make those improvements, that we can continue improvements there. Maybe there's other ways that we can, as we grow, can make additional improvements. So the overall goal is to provide better services, and that is what we're hoping to be able to accomplish with this legislation. Thank you.
Chair, I really appreciate that, and Mr. Snyder, I really appreciate that. But it does still speak to that specific point. It's why this is the wrong format and forum for the conversation from top to bottom, because you can't have a legitimate conversation about transportation without talking about housing. So this should be connected to that conversation, not solid waste. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. Council Lady Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. And I have to admit, I'm a bit distracted with everything that's going on in my district, and I do want to say that as far as flooding and 80% of it could have been avoided, I'm going to challenge that, because the vast majority of the severe damage that happened in my district is because I've got hundreds of homes that are in a floodplain. And those are the ones that were most severely damaged. My home had water damage, but it was, anyway, that's our bigger problem, is that we've got a lot of homes in the flood zone. Could we manage our creeks and streams better? Yes, and we're going to work on that. To your point of a 20 or 30 year problem, Councilman Hall, I do agree with that, and we've got some work to do there. I'm looking at this. I don't necessarily have a question, but I do have a perspective that I'd like to share. And we've heard a lot from returning council members that have obviously 4 more years of experience in all of this than the new guys. But what I hear repeatedly is lack of confidence. There's some mistrust. And from my perspective, we have a new administration, we have new leadership, we have a new set of expertise and skills in these particular departments. And I think we can all agree that Public Works needs an overhaul and has for a while. And so we are trying to make things better. Everybody wants to make things better. And so that is separating the apples from oranges and making some changes that can be a little bit uncomfortable. What I don't want us to do is to fail to make a good decision based out of fear or mistrust from the past, from past processes, from past bad decisions, from past personnel that maybe did do the wrong thing, that maybe we did make some missteps, but we can't fail to make a good decision here. What I really like about this in particular is that it's a pilot program of sorts. You know, if it doesn't work, awesome. We go right back to where we were. No harm, no foul. This isn't a charter amendment. This isn't, you know, creating anything new that's permanent or anything. And so, you know, I'm of the mindset that we need to make some changes and make things better. And so let's try it. I don't have as much fear. Again, I don't have as much expertise. I mean, as much experience as my as some of my colleagues do. And so I absolutely respect that. I just, I really don't want to make a bad decision and fail to move forward. And so then we're just stuck, not moving anywhere. And then we've gotten nowhere. If that makes sense. I hope I'm articulating that properly. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Council ID. I have Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. So my question, I believe I've asked this before and I'm still kind of confused and unsure on the outcome, but you know, for those of us who have districts that are split between USD and GSD, where not everybody in our district pays for trash, how will they be affected if this moves to if this moves to the water department? Because everybody pays a water bill, but not everybody pays a trash bill. So can you try to explain to me if they will be affected, if they won't be affected, and why? But can you explain that process? Can you explain the end results for that?
Sure, Councilman Bradford, I'm going to give you my answer and then turn you over to the genius in the room. The bottom line is it will have no effect on your constituents. That is the black and white answer. The funding for solid waste retrieval will remain from the USD General Fund funding. So that stays the same. In that half of your district that is USD, they'll just see that. All they'll know, or they may not know, is that that employee is now a Metro Water Services employee instead of a Public Works employee. The GSD should not notice anything. That's sort of the black and white answer. Let me turn you over to Shannon Whitelaw.
Thank you, Councilmember Bradford. Mike Jamieson is absolutely right. The only thing I would add is that some of solid waste is funded through the GSD, particularly convenience centers, because that's for the entire county, and there will be no change or effect from that either. And the people at the convenience center, you won't know the difference of who they're working for from a general constituents standpoint. So there won't be any change from a service standpoint or a difference between USD or GSD and what service they're getting now. If this is passed and those services are moved to water services. Does that answer your question?
I believe it does, because I just want to make sure that those who are in the GSD don't find themselves one day, you know, paying an extra fee now because they're getting that we're doing trash countywide basically through this new program. So I appreciate that answer, and it kind of cleared up a little bit of my confusion.
I just want to, you made the comment that trash is now county-wide, and I don't think that's the case. I think it just stays in the General Services District. Can you clarify that, what I heard?
County. So basically what I was referring to is the entire county has what gets covered by the water department. So we're taking trash and putting it into a county-wide department. Okay. And I was making sure that those who don't pay into that fund aren't getting a surprise bill.
Gotcha. Thank you. I don't see any other hands, so I hope you will indulge this chair just for a minute. I too have heard a lot of statements of mistrust, but I think I've also heard generally that we all agree, or many of us agree, that there needs to be a focused DOT. And frankly, I can't think of two people I trust more to kind of get us started down that track than Ms. DeMassimo and Ms. Whitelaw. I've watched them work over the since elected and been very impressed with their expertise in transportation and their management capabilities. And I think that they're creating this kind of pilot program is a good idea, as some have stated, in that it gives us a chance to work out any of the kinks or see if it's going to work or not work before we do a charter amendment that kind of locks us into a position. And thirdly, we've heard a lot about pay as you throw, and we've heard a lot about the funds paying from the enterprise funds, and it's unfortunate. I think that has gotten into the conversation because that's not at all what this memorandum of understanding will do if we pass it. It just moves trash collection to water and keeps everything else pretty much the same. And I say that, I understand why that happened, because we're going to be running out of landfill space probably in the next council meeting. And I don't think any council member should think that going forward, when that begins to happen and we have to address that there won't be some discussions about other ways to pay. And I think all options need to be on the table for discussion purposes. But that is not happening now, as Mr. Jameson has said. So just thoughts. If there are no more questions, thank you all for attending. And please forgive me if I cut anybody off. That was not certainly my intent. I think we had a good discussion, and I hope everyone got their points out. And thank you for the administration. I know you've been working hard on this, and it can harder than you probably wanted to. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody. Have a happy Easter.
Meeting chair.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.